George Costanza. You remember George Costanza? He was a legend. George Costanza had this great episode where he had this fancy, high-paying job with a corner office, and he didn't do any work, like literally none, but he wanted to look busy, so he would storm up and down the hallways carrying file folders. He would leave the lights on in his car in front of the office building on the weekend, even though he wasn't there. He would yell into the phone, even though no one was on the other end of the line, and they kept paying him because he looked so busy. I have to admit, Mark Carney has looked really busy this summer.
He actually has.
He's been flying off to Europe to sign declarations of intent that actually mean absolutely nothing. He's been holding roundtables with other politicians. You've seen politicians patting each other on the back, congratulating themselves on all the excellent meetings they've been holding. There have been letters written to ministers that then get leaked to media and are reported with great fanfare on front pages everywhere. My goodness, he's almost as busy and as useless as George Costanza.
Okay, Canada has a bone to pick, obviously, with America, and it's not getting better. It's actually getting significantly worse. Canada also has a bone to pick with China. It's not getting better. In fact, it's getting, you guessed it, significantly worse. And now, soon to be, Canada will be in a direct war with Russia because Carney, our prime minister, wants to send potentially troops to Ukraine, boots on the ground on the front line, so that Canadian forces can be there to die in Ukraine or Russia or that territory to fight against Putin, to which Putin has just broken his silence and said, if Western forces get involved, then it's free game and we're going to absolutely kill everybody that we see. So there you go. Canada's going to war with Russia. Canada's in a war with China, a trade war, and Canada's in a war with America, a trade war. Yeah, it's not looking very good for Canada. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. Do it before the end of the world because it seems like we're almost there. We got a lot to take a look at in this video, so I do hope you stick around for the full thing. Starting with President Trump, who is in a war with Venezuela and says that he will shoot in order to shoot Venezuelan, planes that are flying near American Navy bases. Yep, it's a real thing. Let's have a look.
What happens if Venezuela flies jets over U.S. naval vessels again?
Well, I would say they're going to be in trouble. We'll let them know about that. We heard that happen, but it wasn't really over, not like they described. But I would say, General, if they do that, you have a choice of doing anything you want, okay? If they fly in a dangerous position, I would say that you can, you or your captains can make the decision as to what they want to do, all right?
Sure. Sir, we have one more.
You said they didn't go over.
Say it?
How close did they get? You said the planes didn't.
Well, I don't want to talk about that, but if they do put us in a dangerous position, they'll be shut down. Thank you very much, everybody. So we're going to now cover the G20.
Just casually. That's incredible. Talk about a strong leader. Just casually says, yeah, right, live on the air. If you think that it's, responsible enough to engage and defend our territory because they're trying to harass us and, F around, they're going to find out. You have my permission live on the air for the world to see. That is bonkers. I mean, not in a bad way. That's just like America's back. Like this is the golden age of America that at least we are entering. And I can't wait to get a taste of that as a Canadian. If you know what I mean. 51, baby, 51. But I'll take a look at Canada's involvement with China because the Saskatchewan Premier, Scott Moe, is responsible for like most of our farming in this country. And our farming is under attack by China because Canada has attacked China's electric vehicle sector. And so when China puts a squeeze on Canada, we feel it a lot more than when we put the squeeze on China. So Scott Moe is getting ready to go and stand up for the farmers and set up for Canadians to China. That's like what a federal job or a federal MP's job would be, not at the provincial level, but he's taking matter into his own hands, which is admirable. So let's have a look now at what's going on.
Premier Scott Moe is headed to China as part of a trade mission. And today we learned he is getting support from Ottawa. John Flatters on who the Prime Minister is sending and what the trip will entail.
The Prime Minister is sending his parliamentary secretary to China with a delegation led by Premier Scott Moe.
I'm very pleased with the announcement this morning from the federal government that the parliamentary secretary to Prime Minister Carney, Cody Bloy, who was at our meeting a couple of weeks ago in Saskatoon, he'll be joining us in our mission in China, and that is a positive.
With recent announcements of almost 76% tariffs on canola, that's one of the main topics of discussion set for the trip that will begin on Saturday.
What we've heard from our producers and from our exporting industry right here in Saskatchewan and Canada is that all they would like is to have fair market access into as many markets around the world as possible.
The Trade and Export Development Minister is also headed to Asia, making a stop in South Korea before joining Moe in Japan following his mission to China.
We're certainly going to be engaging with a number of trade, industry, energy partners there, as well as engaging in industry roundtables. We're going to be talking CCUS, nuclear, and while we're there, we're also going to be witnessing an extension that Vito has.
The NDP says with trade numbers to the U.S. and China significantly down, this trip is 6 months too late.
This trip was thrown together last minute. Looking at the results of the devastating tariffs on our canola products, I'm here to simply ask, why has this taken so long?
Farmers who are in the middle of harvest know there will be an impact to canola prices due to the tariffs, but it's the uncertainty that's the most draining.
Obviously, we would like to see these tariffs go away. In the interim, we need some reassurance from our federal government that they've got a plan, that they're gonna try and negotiate a way out of this, and if that fails, that they will support producers that are going to need that support if prices continue to erode.
The trade mission.
So I don't think Canada will be able to negotiate its way out of this. But what I do think is going to happen is the fact that Mark Carney is spending a lot of money to help support the fight against trade wars, not just with America, but also specifically with China. So we're just going to have to wait and see how that does play out. But in regards to Mark Carney's spending, we do have like a segment of this video about that. It'll just be coming up very soon. Next, we're going to take a look at our trade war, because Canada and America have been fighting each other tit for tat. And well, CUSMA is coming up for review very soon, which has a lot of Canadians worried, rightfully so.
We've also got our eyes on the tariff situation and what it means for Canada now that a U.S. federal appeals court has thrown much of Donald Trump's tariff strategy into uncertainty. CTV's Rachel Aiello now, and where things stand now that September is here. Hi, Rachel.
Hey, Sandy. The start of September marked the end of Canada's counter tariffs on U.S. goods covered under CUSMA. Today, Donald Trump showed no signs of reciprocating. The U.S. president is preparing to defend his global tariff regime before the Supreme Court.
Because without the tariffs, this country is in serious trouble.
Trump standing by his trade tactics comes as one cabinet minister asserted today that despite dropping retaliatory tariffs, Prime Minister Mark Carney hasn't put his elbows down.
Well, there's no capitulation. Let's be clear. Zero. Never. That's not happening. We're trying to match exactly what the Americans have done.
And trade talks are ongoing.
It's a complicated negotiation.
That negotiation will be a central focus as Carney convenes his cabinet in the GTA. Starting tomorrow, the Prime Minister and his front bench will be planning fall priorities, from preparing for the CUSMA review and supporting tariff-impacted sectors to fast-tracking big projects. To that end, today, Internal Trade Minister Chrystia Freeland hosted a Made in Canada summit at a Hamilton steel plant to try and generate domestic investment in major transportation projects. Sandy?
All right, Rachel.
Oh, my goodness. These people are not good at business, but what they are good at is spending our money. We still don't even have a budget. We are like 500 days, or not that long, but we're a very, very long time. Actually, we might be 500 days without a budget. It's been a very, very, very long time since we've had a budget. So what do we expect from our budget? Well, it's going to be a lot of spending, a lot of red, not a lot of green. Let's have a look now.
Well, a second day of meetings in Toronto between Prime Minister Mark Carney and his cabinet to focus on what the Liberals call tough budget choices. CTV's Judy Trin now on the challenges of the next budget and what it might look like. Judy. Sandy, Mark Carney's government wants to rein in spending while finding money for investments.
C'est un budget d'austérité et d'investissement.
Delivering the Prime Minister's vision of a budget with both austerity and investment measures falls on Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne. He was asked if spending restraints would result in job losses in the public sector.
There'll be adjustment in different places, but at the same time, we're going to be empathic to make sure that we're always there for Canadians.
Cabinet ministers met behind closed doors to find money for major projects and defense, and to present what savings they found. The Carney government is aiming to cut day-to-day spending of up to 15% over the next 3 years. Federal unions call the move reckless.
I think that public service.
So here's the problem with our political system right now. And I don't know how to fix this. This is just me criticizing. Normally, I like to provide some sort of options to fix this, but in this case, we're just going to criticize. When you run for politics, if you are running as an MP, right, a conservative MP, so whatever your background is, maybe you have a university degree, maybe you have a college degree, maybe it's Bachelor of Arts, maybe it's sciences, whatever it is. And maybe you have a goal of being a cabinet minister for, let's say your background is economics and you understand finance. Maybe that's what you've always done and you're qualified in doing. So you run in politics in, downtown Toronto or downtown Ottawa or wherever the hell it is. Okay. And you win. You're now a conservative or liberal MP. It doesn't even matter. Okay. So now you're on the winning team because you guys now won. You are government. You're part of the government. So whoever the leader is, let's say it's Pierre Poilievre, he gives you your portfolio, not based off of your qualifications, but based off of what he and the team decide would be best fitted. So maybe you as a finance expert don't actually get the finance portfolio. Maybe you get the heritage portfolio or the transportation portfolio, something that you have absolutely no idea about. Do you see how that could be a little bit flawed? We all saw our finance minister in the last series of Parliament, Chrystia Freeland. She was the finance minister and did a not so good job and refused to table the budget when she was with Justin Trudeau and said, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to quit because screw this. I'm not giving this to the people. So we find ourselves in these positions. And now that I've seen Chrystia Freeland be shifted out, but she's still in cabinet, just a different spot. And now it's François-Philippe Champagne. Like, these people are not qualified to handle billions and trillions of dollars. They hire people and those people have biases. They have agendas, or they all are just kind of working together to make themselves rich. And that's just one instance under one portfolio, which is the finance. So if you're wondering why all of our stuff is completely messed up, it's because they're everyday people that went to school for whatever, and then they get handed these massive portfolios, which is supposed to be like big level deal, like stuff that like you're supposed to train your entire life for, and they're not qualified for it at all. That's why they get moved around all the time. They get shuffled in and out of cabinet because you can do that in politics. And so that's a weird thing where you can have a finance minister that has literally no idea what they are doing. Or you could have a prime minister who was a drama teacher and has no idea what he's doing. Do you see how messed up Canadian politics really is? Yeah, I don't know what the solution is, but it sure as heck is not having a liberal government. I can tell you that.
Service cuts can do a real harm to Canadians because the public service is there every day to serve Canadians and to protect them and to keep them safe.
The number of federal public servants has grown by more than 100,000 workers in a decade. The data shows that as of June, there were more than 357,000 public servants.
We're certainly looking to see what the government proposes to do around addressing workforce, whether that's a direct cut or more of a careful attrition and reprioritization.
He's doing neither investment nor austerity. What he's doing is even more bureaucracy and spending.
Complicating matters, the government will take in billions less in revenue this year after Donald Trump complained the Prime Minister dropped retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. and the digital services tax. Sandy.
This is what happens when you have a bunch of people that are not qualified to do their job to run a country, and they LARP. I call it LARPing. For those who don't know, LARPing is what those, weird nerds do, which is not a dismissive thing. Like, it's whatever. The dudes that go out into the field under a willow tree and they wear, like old medieval time stuff, and they've got wooden swords or real clanky swords, and they just pretend to battle the swords and they duel as in medieval times. They dress up, they talk that way. That's live action role playing. That's what Canadian politics truly is a bunch of LARPers, people that are unqualified to do a job in which they try to convince a population that they are either qualified to do or overqualified to do, and then we end up in a state where it's just an absolute mess. And if you don't believe me, take a look at this banker guy. The banker guy, someone who's supposed to be good with money, who has refused to table a budget so far, who's been spending. And while we're in the midst of an economic collapse, we're on the verge of bankruptcy. The Bank of Canada's going, what the hell is going on with us? We got no idea. We might have to print more money. While all of this is going on, Canada's solution, our Prime Minister's solution, is this.
The second major initiative that we're announcing today is a new $5 billion strategic response fund to help Canadian businesses adapt, diversify, and build that new economy. This fund has three core objectives. First, to help businesses pivot to new products and markets. Secondly, to retrain and retain skills and production here in Canada. And thirdly, to make our businesses globally competitive.
So in this latest announcement, Mark Carney has said that the Liberal government will go on a $5 billion spending spree to revive the economy. Canada's deficit is about to get much bigger than what we expected. But hold on, it's not his fault, right? It's because of Trump and America and tariffs and China. But hold on, it's not the Prime Minister's fault. It's because of a global pandemic. But hold on, it's not their fault because it's a Russian war. Hold on, it's not their fault because it's this war, that war, this misunderstanding. They're the bad guys. It's over there. That's why we have to print more money and spend, not because of us. We're doing everything right, but it's always somebody else's fault. Do you see how kind of crazy that sounds? It's never been a Canadian Prime Minister's fault or a Canadian government's fault. When the opposition criticizes, it's always the other party that's at fault. But the party or the government who's been in charge calling the shots, it's never their fault. It's always external factors. Trump, Russia, pandemic, you name it. Literally everything and anything but their own spending habits. The guy who literally said that we've been spending too much and we're going to stop that, the banker guy, the guy who's supposed to be good with money, not just like an entry-level banker when you go to RBC and you speak to a teller, you go sit in those side rooms, not that guy. He was like the Bank of Canada governor, dude. He's like printed on our money, right? Some of our crazy money our new little monopoly money that we've got. You see Mark Carney's signature. He's like a high-level guy. And his idea of solving Canada's economy is to spend more money that we don't have in a time that we have less money than ever. You can't make this up. I don't even freaking understand it, but that's just me. What does our leader of the opposition have to say about it? Well, let's have a look.
We're going to go back to Pierre Poilievre now in Ottawa, who is speaking there. Let's listen in as he continues to give a press conference. We'll be answering questions coming up in a moment.
Being a passionate advocate for banning gas-powered vehicles, calling for them to be banned by 2030 in his book, Values, which, by the way, was much more aggressive than Trudeau's plan, to ban them in 2035. He's finally admitted that the Conservatives were right, just like we were right on the carbon tax. But he's doing a clumsy retreat, saying that he's going to delay this mandate. So now, businesses who would otherwise consider investing in automaking here in Canada will have to put that investment on hold while Mark Carney dithers for another year to try and figure out how he can ban people from putting gas and diesel in their trucks and cars. Mark Carney can't even get his flip-flops right. But this really has been, as I said yesterday, the Seinfeld summer for Mark Carney, a big show about nothing. You know, I think specifically about George Costanza. You remember George Costanza? He was a legend. George Costanza had this great episode where he had this fancy, high-paying job with a corner office, and he didn't do any work, like literally none, but he wanted to look busy. So he would storm up and down the hallways carrying file folders. He would leave the lights on in his car in front of the office building on the weekend, even though he wasn't there. He would yell into the phone, even though no one was on the other end of the line. And they kept paying him because he looked so busy. I have to admit, Mark Carney has looked really busy this summer.
He actually
He's
has
been flying off to Europe to sign declarations of intent that actually mean absolutely nothing. He's been holding roundtables with other politicians. You've seen politicians patting each other on the back, congratulating themselves on all the excellent meetings they've been holding. There have been letters written to ministers that then get leaked to media and are reported with great fanfare on front pages everywhere. My goodness, he's almost as busy and as useless as George Costanza. It has been a big show about nothing. Nothing is getting done under Mark Carney. Everything is getting worse. The American tariffs, which he promised to get rid of by negotiating a win, they're worse. Housing crisis is worse. Food inflation is worse. Crime is worse. Unemployment is worse. Everything has been worse under Mark Carney.
I feel old because I very much understand the Seinfeld reference. That's my takeaway from this, by the way, is that anyone who's likely younger than me, so I'm 31. So if you're 30 or maybe 25 and under, you might not really know who Seinfeld is. I get that. And I appreciate that. And then I also am a little bit angry that I understand this, but people who are younger than me, and not even by much either, people who are like maybe 3 years, 4 years younger than me, might not know who Seinfeld is. So yeah, I'm not too happy about that, but moving my emotions out of this, I do really like that messaging. That's a very good thing that Pierre Poilievre said, because it's true. Mark Carney has legitimately looked very busy, and he's made a lot of commitments, including boots on the ground in Ukraine. You remember that? Let's have a little recap.
We are working through with our allies in Coalition of the Willing and with Ukraine, the modalities of those security guarantees on land, in the air, and the sea, and I would not exclude the presence of troops.
I would not exclude the presence of troops, Mark Carney says. Well, the problem with that is now that the presence of troops is on the table, Putin has just said that NATO troops in Ukraine would be legitimate targets for destruction. You don't have to hear me say it. Let's listen to the guy himself.
The latest this morning in Russia's war on Ukraine. There is a new threat this morning from the Kremlin on the morning after Ukraine's closest allies committed to security guarantees that include troops. And in another development, U.S. President Donald Trump is reportedly losing hope that he can broker an end to the war. He did appear to give a big push to peace talks after his summit in Alaska with Russian President Vladimir Putin. But NBC News is quoting a senior Trump administration official today as saying Trump increasingly doesn't believe that will happen. Trump did tell reporters he plans to speak to Putin soon. Putin himself is making a direct threat to countries like Canada, countries that are promising security guarantees for Ukraine if there is a ceasefire. Crystal Gamansing joins us from London once again with the latest that we're hearing from the Russian leader. Crystal.
Good morning, Heather. Yes, we went from hearing the Kremlin say that they would not discuss the idea of foreign troops providing security guarantees for Ukraine, saying it was fundamentally unacceptable to Moscow, to now we have the Russian President Vladimir Putin saying that he would consider any foreign troops on the ground in Ukraine as a direct and legitimate threat. Take a listen.
Что касается возможных контингентов воинских на Украине, но это одна из первопричин втягивания.
Potential foreign military contingents in Ukraine is one of the root causes behind drawing Ukraine into NATO. Therefore, if some troops appear there, especially now during military operations, well, things are about to get significantly worse. We proceed with the fact that these will be legitimate targets for destruction, right? So there you go. It's right there. It's right in the subtitles. Putin has said it, and it's a legitimate concern that we now have to take into consideration. So is Mark Carney, Canada's newest and latest unqualified prime minister, going to send your sons and your daughters to fight against Putin? Are you really ready for that? Are you ready for your sons and daughters, your uncles, your cousins to go and die against Putin? I'm not. I've got kids. I don't want that at all. I don't want that at all. But here we are. Liberals, right? Elbows up.